Time no see. It is both myself, Zach, your host for tonight. I used to be formerly on the show. I am here, as always, with Jamie, your favorite co host, also my co host every Sunday morning. And also, third of all, we've got our friend Steve here. He was on with us a few weeks ago on Going for Two on that Sunday morning pregame show. Steve, how are you doing?
Good. What's going on, guys?
Good to see you again. Good to have you. Jamie, how you doing? I see you're not in a Browns jersey today, so you must be feeling good.
Oh yeah, I wore my Olave jersey in light of him getting arrested or speeding, whatever he was doing.
I wear my Jokic jersey in honor of similar things. The NBA starting now. Both relevant in the news. And with that in mind, we are just going to jump right into a few of the NFL news things that came up. There's been a few injuries. We had Seahawks linebacker Ushena Nwosu having season-ending surgery on a torn pectoral. Browns running back Jerome Ford, low-grade high ankle sprain, expected to miss 1 to 2 weeks. Or actually, before I jump any further, first off, Steve, do you want to touch a little bit on Nwosu and that kind of impact defensively? Or if there's any names, maybe IDP wise, that people should be looking at with that injury for the Seahawks defense?
I didn't hear the connection got lost.
Oh, sorry. Steve, no, what I was asking was specifically in NFL news, we had Nwosu for the Seahawks, the linebacker. He's out with a torn pec, season-ending surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts IDP wise? Is there anything you'd recommend? Anyone that's people should be keeping an eye out for in regards to maybe more production or maybe an ad or someone they should
Right.
pursue?
And you guys can follow me on IDP Hunter on Twitter. I just posted about this. There is a player. He's slowly getting snaps. He's a second-year player. A lot of times, second-year defensive players get buried in the ADP. But the guy's name is Boye Mafe, and he has the highest win pass rush percentage out of any player. I know, Jamie, you just picked him up.
I just picked him up, man. He had like 4 sacks, a sack in each game that he played this year. He's getting like 15 to 20 fantasy points. Love him.
He's out winning. He's winning. He's the top player in the NFL as far as win pass rush rate, according to PFF. He's beating Nick Bosa, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, guys on that level. So just imagine when we get to here's the stat. Boye Mafe's got 33% win pass rush rate. Will Anderson's 25, Micah Parsons 30, Myles Garrett's 27. So just imagine we get to the halfway point when this guy starts getting more and more playing time.
Yep. I think he's only playing like 40 to 50% of snaps right now. Man.
Yeah. Right now, week 1, 53%. Week 2, didn't play. Week 3, 73%. Week 4, 51%. Week 5, 56%. And finally, last week, 79%. So
nice. And he's only 15% owned, so grab him up if you're an IDP.
That's the kind of trending that we like to see. Low ownership and someone that's going to be on the rise fairly quickly. So now's the time to get them. Also, like I already alluded to, Browns running back Jerome Ford, low grade high ankle sprain, as Doc refers to. There's essentially no such thing as a low grade high ankle sprain. They say 1 to 2 weeks. It's probably more like 3 to 4.
Yep.
And with that in mind, Jamie, any other thoughts there before we jump into the rest of the NFL news?
No, we'll talk more about his demise and who's taking over for him later in the show.
Perfect. Also, we have the NFL questioning the Atlanta Falcons right now in regards to reporting policies and when they knew that Bijan's tummy was upset or whatever was going on. There's some speculation as to, when they knew and if they should have reported it, he didn't have that questionable status until after the game was done, right? And raised some red flags. NFL is questioning, investigating that as we speak. We don't need to look any further into that. We do have Dawson Knox, though, having surgery on the wrist. Bills tight end. If you're like me and you love Dalton Kincaid, 8 targets on 8 receptions this past week. His snap percentage is only going up. We know the Bills like to use their tight ends. We know they're going to be on the field a lot. With that in mind, keep Kincaid in mind. I think that's all we really need to take away from the Dawson Knox news, right?
Yeah, of course. He's going to get more usage. He's athletic, young.
And like I covered earlier tonight on Fantasy and Frames with Gator, specifically Dalton Kincaid's available in a lot of leagues in redraft format.
Yep.
So if you're in need of a tight end, I believe he was roughly 40% owned. So that's one of those guys where I want to go get him now. And I want to be a little bit aggressive with that fab in the process. Also, we have a relatively interesting piece of news with Broncos cornerback Kareem Jackson suspended 4 games for unnecessary roughness. It was an ugly hit on Luke Musgrave last week. He definitely didn't try to get out of the way whatsoever. And he's had previous discrepancies with the NFL this year. There wasn't a previous suspension, just fines, but they slapped him with 4 games. He's obviously appealing. First off, Jamie, I'll go to you. Just answer this for me. Do you expect his appeal to get any of those games dropped, or do you think it gets 4?
I don't know. It could go either way. It'll probably get dropped down a couple games. They normally do when they get appealed.
I disagree there, and I'll say it's strictly because most of the times with its appeals, it's something other than unnecessary roughness.
True.
So
You think of
I
that?
think
Yeah.
I think with this, with player safety, NFL is going to be like, come on, dog. You already had this opportunity. Steve, I wanted you to touch on that, but I also wanted
Yeah.
to hear your IDP perspective. If there's anything that we should be mindful of in regards to that Denver secondary, if he is out for 4 games.
Yeah, well, I think I just read on just recently on IDP on Twitter on IDP. I think they dropped the suspension
Already?
from 4 to 6 games. I think
Wow.
they just did. Let me
Christian's
just-
in here as well. No, Christian.
good
I'm
call,
pretty sure he
Christian.
got. I'm surprised. I really am. With just since he was kind of a habitual abuser of that
Yeah,
rule
it
and
just happened, like recent news.
Okay.
I just
Okay.
so
I apologize for the delayed news then, Christian, because I was on a previous show. But that is, yeah, I'm surprised. But no, with that in mind, Steve, are there any things we should be mindful of for those 2 games he's out in regards to the IDP realm?
there's a guy that fills in from time to time. I mean, usually when the Broncos are getting laid out and just scored upon, when they're getting
I mean,
dunked on,
always.
right? There's a guy in the secondary. He's not great, but an IDP you don't need great. You need cleanup tackles. The guy's name is Turner-Yell. Just give him a look. He actually produces in that spot, and he's the next man up for Kareem Jackson. Of course, the corner Mathis, same kind of player, Justin Simmons, but these are deep league prospects. I wouldn't put them in my top 20, top 15, nothing like that.
Okay. So just deep waiver guys if you really are desperate, that kind of thing. No, I
Right.
appreciate that. Also, real quick on the offensive side, for a lot of our fantasy players out there, we do have something relevant there too, which is the Buccaneers running back Chase Edmonds is returning from the IR. Jamie, any impact there?
Man. I wish Mike was on this show right now because me and him last year were all over Chase Edmonds and it failed miserably. I don't want anything to do with that guy anymore. He hurt my soul last year. I don't think he's even worth the look.
As someone that does a waiver wire show, I can tell you the running back position is very bleak for options out there because it's just been an ugly year in regards to fantasy. And with that in mind, Chase Edmonds is someone I'm keeping on my radar. He's not someone I'm pursuing right now in regards to waivers for redraft or someone I'm really trying to acquire in Dynasty either. But someone I just kind of want to monitor closely. Steve, any other thoughts on Chase Edmonds?
Not really. I'm on a case-by-case basis with that guy. We're going to wait and see. I've been up and down with him for the last couple of years. I'm sick of it, quite frankly. I got a tummy ache. I'm just going to wait and see.
Yep. You and Bijan both.
Yep.
Right? Also, there was news in the Arizona realm as well with Zach Ertz. He is going to be out for a bit now, which is great for the Trey McBride stuff. We will talk more about that later. But also Kyler Murray, he is now off the pup. He is back. And while there's potential for week 9, I would expect and plan for week 10. And in redraft formats, if Kyler's available, go get him now. Any thoughts on Kyler?
I mean, they have that, 28-day window after they took him off IR. I think he'll play a couple weeks from now. They'll put him in there.
Steve?
I don't know. If you would ask me that a week or 2 ago, I would have been like, well, clearly it behooves them to, tank a little bit, let them sit. But if you look at the way they're playing, they're actually playing to win. Dobbs is playing. They're trying to run the ball. They're beating the Cowboys. So they probably will play him. They probably will play him just in spite of that.
Yeah. I like Kyler the rest of the year. Week 10 and on, I'm very bullish on him. I want to get him now. He has that top 12 QB potential. and there's not a lot of guys out there, especially that lower half of the league right now. It's been ugly at that position if you don't have a top 12 guy. And Kyler's the only one out there that realistically has that high level of ceiling. And that's where it's a big boomer bust, but I'm going to trust that ground game, even when they're playing the 49ers type of defense, he's going to give me some sort of respectable fantasy points. I think his floor is higher than a lot of those other guys that you'd be considering. With that in mind, I think we covered everything we really need to right now for NFL news. Let's jump into the cheats of the week, and more specifically, or let's before we get into the cheats of the week, let's talk about the Monday Night Football.
Yes.
That was a lot, and a lot of stuff that I don't think we were expecting. And before I say any more, Jamie, what did you take away from that?
Yeah, I actually enjoyed that game. I know me and you were on a live together watching it for the second half. But one thing I did notice is Addison, man, he's stepping up while Jefferson's out. Like I don't think he's gonna like step into his role and be as big as Jefferson is. Like he's not gonna be the top 3 guy, but he's gonna be a solid wide receiver. Low end 1 maybe some weeks, wide receiver 2. I'm putting him in my lineup every week from now on. He had 7 catches, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. But what most impressed me was like the catches that he made. They were all over the field. They were like going up the middle, like down the seam. They were a lot of contested catches. Like, did you see that one where he right before the half where he ripped it out of Ward's hands and took it to the house? Like that was awesome. He's shown a lot of promise, man, even just as a rookie. So I was very impressed in the way he showed up. He's dominating. I'm not saying, like I said, he's not going to be Jefferson, but he is someone that you can throw in your lineup and get big numbers from him. And even when Jefferson comes back, I only see like a few targets, maybe 3 targets less. He's still going to get his, man, because he was playing good even when Jefferson was out there.
And before we get into Steve's, I want to feed right off of Jamie there. My big takeaway from Monday Night Football was that Addison is real. We already know JJ is real. We know Hawk is real. But you know what is not? It's that running back room. It's Alexander Madison. It's everyone else behind him. There is no reason to trust any of them or have any high hopes, high expectations, or even decent expectations for any of them at this point, because I think it's been subpar to say the least. And I don't really think we can use the words balanced offense when we talk about Minnesota. And I don't think they need to be balanced. Honestly, when you have Hawk, when you have Addison, when you have JJ, obviously JJ's out right now, but when you have those 3 weapons and Kirk Cousins, who is a respectable QB behind, I feel good about that offense. But I don't think there's really anything else that needs to be said about the running back room or that side of the ball. So with that in mind, Steve, how about you tell us what you were taking away with the Vikings defense?
In the spirit of Halloween, I like to give you a movie recommendation. It's called The Sixth Sense. Bruce Willis. He sees dead people.
Great.
Guess what? I'm an IDP guy. I just see defensive people. That whole game, defense won that game for y'all, okay? You got Brock Purdy running around. He's seeing ghosts. He put up 2 picks. Y'all won. Minnesota won 22-17. That was the reason, because the defense, not just the passing defense, but the rushing. They held CMC in check. 15 carries, 45 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions, 51 yards, receiving touchdown. Now that sounds like a decent game, but that's CMC. He's elite. So by putting CMC in check, the passing defense won that game. That's all I seen on the field. Let me give you a little. This isn't really a sleeper anymore because we have 7 weeks now. This guy's been the number 1 defensive back. The guy's name is Cam Byram. He leads the NFL at his position in tackles and also catches allowed. So what you have there is you have a guy getting a lot of passes thrown on, making a lot of tackles. If you're in a tackle savvy league, which most of us are, Bynum's your pickup if you can still get him. A lot of places you can't get him, but.
And one last thing, Steve, I want to touch on that defense is, if I know pretty much none of us, I think, are in leagues where you're doing defense and special teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not in any like that. But if you are, or if it's IDP, the Minnesota Vikings are playing the Green Bay Packers this coming week. I'll get more into the Packers later, but I love that matchup for this Vikings defense. So I'm feeling very good about that defensive and special teams if you're in leagues with that format. And I also feel great about those individual defensive players if I'm in those IDP leagues. Those are the kind of guys I want to have in my lineup this week because, well, I'll get more into the Packers stuff.
I just wish they had more than one sack. That's my only complaint, but beggars can't be choosers.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, and if there's a week they can get sacks, it would be against Green Bay. And specifically, I think it's time we get more into who's real and who's fake. We've had there's a lot of candidates right now. I think that's safe to say. There's a lot of guys that look real. I think there's a lot more right now that look fake. But with that in mind, Steve, let's let you take it away. How about you tell us about a man up in Indy?
Yeah, my real is Jonathan Taylor. He's back, everybody. I mean, everybody was fading him this week. And even the coaching staff, they only gave him 50% of reps. So he got 50% of snaps. This one, he kind of ran away with it. For a little bit of time, he had 76 yards and a touchdown as we progress. So that's, I mean, Zach Moss was involved, but as the weeks progress, you're going to start your studs, your elite players. He's back, everybody. Don't doubt him anymore.
There was never a reason to doubt him to begin with. You just had to trust the process. Be patient. Patience is key in almost everything. It's especially key in fantasy football with some of those heavy hitters that you spend a lot for up front. I mean, the same could go for Bijan at this point, where you just got to trust the process and hope for the best. Because if you spend in this high equity of someone like Jonathan Taylor, sometimes you need to be patient. We knew what we were signing up for. We already knew all the drama this offseason. That's behind us. They gave him a couple weeks of baby step in it. I couldn't agree more. I love Jonathan Taylor. I view him as one of the best running backs in the league still, and for the rest of the year, that is a guy that I love to have on any of my teams, and I'm going to feel great about it, especially too with Anthony Richardson not out there. I know Minshew's been slinging the rock around a lot, and we'll talk about some of those weapons later, but that the reason Minshew can do what he's been doing is partially because JT's been out there, especially last week. But I love JT, and I love him as a play the rest of the year. Jamie, thoughts on JT?
Man, you got to go with the talent. We all knew he was top 5 talent, maybe top 3 talent in the league. Did you see that one play? I think they used him in like a direct snap to him in the Wildcat. So they're going to use him all over there. Like you got to go with the talent, man. I remember we had so many questions. Do I start Taylor or Moss? No, 2 weeks ago, I think we all said Moss, but last week we were saying Taylor. You got to go with the talent now, man, because they were going to get him more involved.
He 15% of snaps his first week back, RB 41 only. Only had 6 attempts.
We knew they were going to come back slowly.
The following week, his second week back, he played 42%. So big increase there. Still only 8 carries for 19 yards, but he had 5 receptions. And more importantly, he's getting closer to that high workload. 42% still isn't a lot. I still want him on the field more. That's still a big increase from 15 the week prior. And then this past week against the Browns, 50%. He finished at RB7. And 18 carries, 75 yards, 4.17 yards per carry. And he had that touchdown.
That's against a great defense, too.
Yep. And I love that he's being utilized in that passing game. He had 4 targets again this week, only 3 receptions, but he was effective at 11.25 yards per target. So, hey, that's exactly what we want to see. With that in mind, I want to get into my reel now. This is a guy that I love dearly. I might marry him. I might have to make him my bride, or maybe I should say McBride. And I'm talking about Trey. That dude, the opportunity is here. First and foremost, let me say this. He was a second-round draft pick. He was viewed as the best tight end in his rookie class. And we all just kind of forgot about him because guess what? He was behind a very respected career tight end that's been one of the top guys, Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz has always had the respect of fantasy owners and of the teams he's been on. And with that in mind, they weren't going to be feeding McBride unless they're in 2 tight end sets with Zach Ertz. And even then, the ball was usually going to go in Ertz's favor. We saw that chemistry between Murray and Ertz one point in time when McBride was a rookie. Well, guess what? Ertz, he's out now. He's hurt. And Kyler's coming back in week 10. We know what Kyler can do. We know he's going to need some weapons. We'll talk about some other weapons here in a second. But without any further, Steve, any thoughts on Trey?
Yeah, he's a dog. He's a baller, but Ertz has been in his way. So clearly there's a path. And I like to see what he can do.
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw it last year when Ertz was out. He stepped up. This year, I didn't think in the beginning of this offseason, I didn't think Ertz was going to be back. So I was actually taking McBride late in my best ball league. So I got a lot of shares of him. So even then, I didn't think Ertz was going to keep up staying healthy all season. So I'm glad I did that.
I mean, we're always chasing rookies. We're always chasing young tight ends, and it's kind of like lightning in a bottle. It's like I'm in my backyard trying to catch lightning bugs when I'm a kid in a jar. So it's always exciting to try to predict these guys and pick these guys and spot them when it happens.
Yeah,
And this is
sorry. A matter of fact, I think it was Gator J. He's the one. Me and him had a conversation about Ertz not stepping up, being able to play the whole year. So he's the one that actually got me on McBride this year.
Oh, I've been on the McBride hype train since he was a rookie, and
me too, for sure.
I never left, never wavered, and it's paying off now. By the way, he's less than 10% rostered in redraft format right now. So with that in mind, he is someone that could have a really high ceiling come the rest of the year, especially at a very bleak position, tight end. With that in mind, though, we don't need to talk about the depressing position of tight end anymore. Let's talk about another weapon in Arizona. We've got a Mr. Michael Wilson. Jamie, please tell me about your guy.
Yeah, so the reason I put him as a real is because we saw his performance this week, and that's the real Michael Wilson that we're going to be getting the rest of the season. He only scored 5.6 fantasy points. He had 3 catches, 26 yards. Let's give up hope. He's not going to repeat that one big game he had week 4 with over 20 points. It's not going to happen. If it didn't happen this past week, we're not going to be able to predict when it will, because the Seahawks, their defense allowed, I know, Steve, me and you talked about this, their defense allowed the most points to wide receivers this year. They give up 46.8 points per game, with 19.2 going to the slot, 27.6 going to the out wide. Like, Wilson only plays 27% in the slot, but that doesn't matter. He still plays on the outside. He could have got points anywhere on that field. So with like Seattle allowing the most points, I think they're 6th in the league allowing to the slot. So if he did play the slot, he should have got some points. If he plays outside, they allowed the most points to the outside. Where the heck was he? Like, he didn't show up. So let's look at how like he scores his fantasy points in zone coverage. Remember, Steve, me and you were talking about that? Was 0 points in man coverage, right? Seattle plays 70.6% of their defensive snaps in zone. So if he scores all his points in zone coverage, where were those fantasy points? Like, it's
you know what makes me mad about Michael Wilson, though? It's like hit or miss. Like you have a wide receiver 6 week, and the next week he'll be wide receiver 78, 42, 50. Yeah. Like, where it's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, he had that one big game. That's it. Like, I just don't see it from him. Like, he's only seeing a 12% target share. He's not seeing any deep targets. Like, he disappears in the red zone. He's nowhere to be found. And like, until we see an increase in targets, I'm not putting him in my lineups at all. And I'm not even keeping him on my redraft rosters. Of course, Dynasty is a different story. But yeah, so Zach, like, what is your thoughts? I know you were going to go into Michael Wilson. What do you think?
I don't know why you would ever have considered putting him in your lineups to begin with in any format. I don't think I never really. I like him as a prospect in Dynasty long term. I like him as maybe a guy that I might put a star next to in redraft for keeping an eye on what he looks like come week 10 when Kyler's back. I might flirt with it then in redraft, but he should not be in your lineups in any format. There shouldn't be a conversation about it. I do like him as a prospect, but this year, these next couple weeks, no. Like our Sunday morning show, I do not want to hear any start sits with Michael Wilson in it unless you've got. Oh wait, there are no buys, so there shouldn't be an excuse for it. And
32 team. That's
yep,
your only excuse.
yep, yeah, and that's a completely different story. But otherwise, Michael Wilson, we got to be patient and see, but not right now. And also, I promise I'm watching, but I'm also monitoring closely on if this over hits for the basketball game because we are very close to the end. Any more thoughts on Michael Wilson before we jump into the next one?
Not
Nope.
really. I think we're good
All
on
right,
that one.
let's talk about another wide receiver then. We're going to go to Kansas City, a guy that I have never respected because, well, I shouldn't say didn't respect, but we knew what he was when he was on his former team. There was some excitement when he went over there. And well, he's been exactly what he's always been. Jamie, take it away. Tell us about a Mr. Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, aka NVS. Like this week, he finished with 17.4 PPR fantasy points. Like that's wide receiver one numbers. He had 0.4 points less than Diggs, and he had 0.4 points more than his counterpart, Rasheed Rice. So it's not going to happen. He had a nice game. He has one of the best quarterbacks in the league throwing him the ball, but don't expect numbers like this every week. It's not possible. We might not even see him score 10 fantasy points the rest of the. It just doesn't make sense. I believe he had 17 targets the whole year. 5 of them were this past week. He only caught 10 balls the whole year. I'm not playing him. I'm going to let him on the waiver wire. I'm going to let my opponents grab him, make the mistake of starting them. They're going to be chasing those points. People chase points all the time. I'm not doing it. I'm just leaving them on the waiver wire. I don't want anything to do with MVS.
Steve, what do you got about Mr. Marquez?
That when you led that segment and you said, wide receiver Kansas City, I'm already shaking my head. I mean, pick one. It's like a gumball in a candy machine. I just want to put a quarter in. What am I going to get? I don't even know. To be honest, he's had a couple games, that he's at least targeted, but all of those guys, you can throw them away and just start over to me personally.
Well, his biggest game this year was week 1. He had 6.8 PPR points. That was his biggest game. The last 3 weeks, I think he only has a combined of 3 fantasy points. He had a big 0, a 2, and a 1.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes is the 13th passing offense, which for him that's mediocre of the pack. We're not used to seeing this, but he if he can't make a player better, then something's wrong there. So yeah, I would fade all of those guys. Maybe I like Rice. I like the rookie a little bit. I like the potential there as like a dynasty taxi stash.
Just traded him away in a dynasty league. Yep.
Huh?
I just traded away Rashia in a dynasty league yesterday. I got Jamie's
that's
quarterback.
good. You want to sell him on the highs though, so that's a good way to do it.
Yep. I wanted a third QB besides CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and I got Deshaun Watson.
There you go.
Gave up Rashia in a second, and Rashia was my sixth. And he was my seventh wide receiver. So
yes, someone wanted
Watson right now.
Yes, someone tried to give me Watson. They wanted my late first and Roshan Johnson. I'm like, you don't know me very well, do you? I'm not giving up Roshan.
And that's a good point Zach had. When we're playing Dynasty, obviously you want to sell them on the high, get out before the low. So a lot of people forget that. A lot of people have this fool's gold in their heart, and they want to just keep these players and expect them to always be forever good. And then they think the other managers in their league are stupid, and they want to give them crap, and it just doesn't work like that. So you're smart to get out on him now. This is probably his all-time high.
No, I like Rashia as a prospect. I don't trust any wide receivers right now in Kansas City. That's one of those where I'll believe it when I see it for a prolonged period. Until that point, it's just that wide receiver carousel that I don't want to be involved in. And also, it was about team need. It was a super flex league. I had 2 young QBs in Stroud and Young that I planned to play. My third QB was Zach Wilson. and he was my I put him in there as well. So in the Superflex Devi League, I gave up Zach Wilson a second, and then Rashee Rice, and I got Deshaun in return. And to me,
Yeah, when you got
I don't like
players,
Deshaun, but I can buy him that cheap where it's like, hey, I'm ready to find out one way or another, and he gives me some depth where at least I know he's a starter past
Yeah.
this year because we know that he's not going to be bought out with this much money. So
you got
that's
good
where,
players. Yeah, you
yeah,
got really good players there. So
yeah, you got to go. You don't want to commit too much, but at the same time, when you have opportunities like that to sell high, like that was an offer sent to
exactly.
me. It was a 3-teamer, and they were waiting on me because I didn't say anything in the chat, and one of the guys had agreed, but he didn't hit accept, and they were like, "Hey, we're
Oh,
waiting on you," and I was like, "Oh no, I already hit accept when you guys sent it." I was like, I just didn't think I needed to say anything, and I
you
love
know,
those kind of offers where I just can smash accept right away and move on.
on that point too, I mean, we're playing in the middle of the bye weeks. A sneaky strategy could be, hey, the rest of the season, this guy doesn't have any buys coming up. Let me trade a guy who has a buy. So you're going to end up getting more points, especially in a redraft. So, there's people out there that do that. They gauge it, they game it. So not a bad strategy to try to make moves right now while these upcoming buys are coming up and you have an extra game essentially to get more points
Absolutely.
for. Mhm.
And one last note on Marquez Valdez-Scantling before we move on to our next player. The Chiefs played against some very favorable matchups in regards to the passing offense or the passing defenses they were facing early in the year. It looks like it's a harder slate later in the year. With that in mind, MVS, he has all year played over 50% of snaps. There's not a single time where his lowest right now is 53%, highest 82. And guess what? In his 82% snaps, he was targeted 3 times, 2 receptions for 13 yards. That was week 2 at Jacksonville. This was his best week. 5 targets, only 3 receptions, 84 yards. And it was that touchdown that inflated him to wide receiver 13. And with that in mind, I haven't seen a lot to trust there. I haven't really seen a reason to believe it. Jamie, I completely agree. Fake there. We do have another wide receiver. It seems like all our wide receivers are just fake.
They're
Take
easy
it
targets.
as it is. Yep, very easy targets. With that in mind, Steve, please tell us who the last easy target is.
Right. Now, I'm probably going to get drugged for this. Okay. Buyers beware. Little fool's gold. It's George Pickens. Okay. First, the good. The good. Okay. He's coming off 2 strong games. He had 10 for 6, 130 yards, and a touchdown. Week 5 came off the bye. Week 7, just now, 8 for 5, 107 yards, and 21.4 average yards per catch. So, like we were talking about, you want to sell these guys. You want to sell these guys when on a high, right? So that's the good. The bad is we got Deontay Johnson coming back, right? Okay. Okay. There's not enough room to go around. And that leads me to my last point, the ugly. Okay. When you pull the ugly Pittsburgh Steelers offense, okay, they're not very good. Okay. I get it. I get it. Pickens had 2 strong games. I get it. I just mentioned Deontay Johnson, but I kind of want to go and put a highlight film of Pickens together and go around to all my leagues and just copy and paste and see who bites on that guy because I want to trade him now because Pickens isn't really throwing the ball very good. In fact, the numbers on this it's quite telling. The Steelers ranked 30th in yards, okay, and they're 27th passing the ball. And then for the wide receiver position, they're 29th at wide receiver. So I say all that because it's quite telling. There's not enough mouths to go around. So if you think that guy is a wide receiver 1, get rid of him now and get yourself some value.
Yeah, no, I like Pickens as a talent, but you're right. Deontay's back. He's gonna absorb more targets. I think he only got 6 targets to Pickens 8, but we can see a swing in that as the weeks go on. Now, if Deontay does end up getting more targets than Pickens, great. But if Pickens keeps about the same targets as Deontay, that's the problem because Pickens gets those deeper targets. They're more valuable. But the thing is, when I was looking up Pickett's like bottom 5 in deep targets, right? And that's where Pickens thrives with those deep targets. He's not throwing a deep ball. But when he does throw the deep ball, I believe he was right in the middle of the pack, quarterback 16-ish for the deep ball accuracy. So we know when he does throw the deep ball, it's not that bad. We just need him to throw it more, and he hasn't done it. He's never done it.
Well, they're too enticed with giving the ball to Najee so he can run for 2 yards a carry.
I was thinking that. And then to your point, too, that's Deontay Johnson's game. Short
Yeah.
catches, target hog. So that's going to really screw up Pickens.
Yeah, I was on Deontay all off season. I was like, they match Pickett and Deontay, their games match. So it's just too bad he got injured. But he's back now.
You know, we're talking about Pickens, and the concern really comes down to the quarterback throwing him the ball. And I think a lot of it comes also from that running game as well, where, you know, there's not that threat of balance when Warren and Najee. I know Warren is really like shown to be the better running back this year, it looks like, than Najee, but still neither have been that sexy or that impressive, you know? And that's where it really hurts Pickett because he can't throw that deep ball that well. And
Right.
they don't have the threat of, oh, what if Najee breaks off for 20 plus yards? Oh, you mean for the second time in his career? I would love to see it. With that in mind, let's move on over. Steve, let's talk about, you know, a more balanced offense. They have the guy we already talked about with Jonathan Taylor as his running back. At quarterback, you know, they've got this dude slinging the rock, and he's got that confidence. He's got that big dick energy where he's saying, I'm going to throw this damn thing. Tell us about the man up in Indy that's handed that ball off to JT and slinging the rock around.
Thank you. And no one's talking about this. This is the story that no one's talking about. Minshew Mania is back. Where's the Gardner Minshew news? I want to grow a mullet if I could. I don't have the hair for it. Let's all grow a mullet. Let's all get a beer. Let's contact Uncle Rico, see if we can throw the football into the mountains. Okay? Minshew Mania is back. Why are we not excited enough? I don't understand it. Granted, they did lose the game. But he put up 305 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, 29 yards on the ground, which produced 2 rushing touchdowns. Can you imagine? Let me just take the analyst out of the way. Can you imagine playing him this week in a super flex, like by accident because you had nobody else to play? I mean, how exciting is that? How rich are you right now? You know,
you're on cloud nine. You really are.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got weapons.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say he's got some good weapons too. But please continue, Steve.
Mm-hmm. And the man can grow a mullet. I mean, how many people do you know that have a great mullet? Rat tail. I could think of 3: John Stamos, Patrick Swayze, and Captain Planet, and that's a cartoon character. Yes. So the man can grow a mullet. He's got the, what do you call it, machismo. He's got the charisma. He could run. He could run for his life against Myles Garrett, still put up 305 passing yards. And then here's the killer, okay? Here's the killer. Week 8, they got a matchup with the Saints. That's doable. Week 9, the Panthers is clearly doable. So if you're stuck with Uncle Rico's kid for the next couple of weeks, you're okay. You can play that guy. I'm more than fine with it. He's back, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon.
And I expect it to only get more efficient because Downs really looks like he's coming into his own as the wide receiver too. Pittman looks like he's got good chemistry with Minshew as well. Also, JT, like we already alluded to, that snap percentage is only going to get higher. That workload's only going to get higher. And I love that Minshew looks comfortable dumping the ball off to JT. And JT's been relatively productive with that as well. And
you forgot how comfortable he looks with his mullet. You got to put the mullet in your fantasy analysis.
I refuse to address the mullet because I think he should shave that thing. Porn stash only. It's a trend. Jamie, any other thoughts on Minshew before we move on?
I think he's a must start in the super flex going forward, man. Like if you got him on your team, you have to consider him every week in the super flex, despite the matchup. I know he had 3 interceptions the previous week, but he's not going to have 3 interceptions every week. He played an amazing Browns defense, and he showed what he could do. So going forward, man, like Pittman, man, remember on the Sunday morning show, I boldly put him like top 10 receiver.
Right next to Michael Wilson?
No, I think Wilson was lower. But, but yeah, man, he did get lucky, though, Pittman, because he had that catch and run, which his yak, that's what he's known for. But that's just going to help Minshew, man. I like him.
I like Minshew. He's in that lower tier, and that's where there's a lot of QBs. I'm still always going to start before him. But if I want zero QB and say it's a one QB league, and I'm not liking any of the guys, I took Daniel Jones, and he's having all these injury issues, a bad offensive line,
Yep.
and just a ugly offense. If I took
I take
Jordan
Minshew over
Love,
him.
and we'll
Mhm.
like I'm taking Minshew over those guys right now, but I'm not going to bench him for any of those top tier guys that
Oh
we
no, not
know.
at all. Like
Even
I'm
even if it's like because you mentioned I wasn't sure how much you said a must start, so I wanted to make
He's a
sure
super flex. Like
like
I'm thinking like, are you gonna start Baker or Minshew,
Yeah.
Dobbs or Minshew this week? Like coming up,
Right.
yeah
Super flex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
he's still I would
And-
still put him at that like QB 22 to
yeah.
26 range
That's
where
fair.
it's still like the bottom end of where I want to be with
But
super
he's got
flex.
that QB
Like
15 upside.
I feel comfortable
And,
with him as being my bottom of the like. I still feel like I'm in a good spot if he's my bottom of the barrel QB3 that
and
I'm sliding in as QB.
And how cool of a story is he? He refuses to go away, even though manager, GMs, teams just kind of push him to the side. He keeps getting quality starts.
Yeah.
Well,
Remember, he did this a couple years ago. The Eagles too. He keeps getting quality starts. He's not going anywhere. He refuses. He's the ultimate underdog. He refuses to tell people his self
Yeah,
worth, and
plus
that's something I want on my team just for good
if you
karma.
what if
remember in the offseason, we weren't sure if Richardson was going to start the first few games. So I
Right.
did draft Minshew in a few spots here and there, just in redraft, best ball leagues.
what if I told you that Minshew could maybe get a full-time job if he shaved that mullet?
Well, maybe that's where his power comes from, dude.
I'm gonna have to disagree with you. That's another segment. Maybe because I can't grow one, but just there's something about the mullet. If you can pull that off, despite the rat tail, despite all against the odds, if you're that confident in yourself that you can go out in public and do that,
Yeah.
then more power to you.
And Minshew knows about going against the odds. Jamie's about to go against the odds as well. Jamie, how about you share with us that Thursday three-leg parlay?
Okay, so I haven't been doing too well on my Thursday night parlays because I like to go deep. I usually do like 5-6 legs. I only picked a 3-leg this week, and I think it's a guarantee. So right now it's a Diggs anytime touchdown. Josh Allen, I took the alternate passing at 225, and the Bills money line because the Bills are in a must-win game right now. So that's at only a plus 150. So I put $25 on it. It's going to win me 62. I also added, you got to check your bonuses. Like if there's any bonuses, I found a no sweat bonus. So I put $25 down. If I lose, I get my $25 back. If I win, I get a whopping $62. But what do you guys think? Diggs anytime touchdown, doable. Josh Allen, his I believe it was at 260 and a half. That's what his line was, but I don't trust Vegas.
Steve, I'll let you touch this first before I jump in.
I'm not a gambler, so I really don't have a comment, my friend. I don't. I know. I can tell you this. I'll give you statistics on a parlay. Vegas got this figured out. I mean, it's very, very unlikely you're going to hit on all three. So something in there is a miss.
Well, that's why I took the alternate on his passing because it's originally at 260. I went down to 225.
Oh, okay. I see what you said.
And then Diggs anytime touchdown, and then obviously the Bills money line. So all I really need is that Diggs touchdown because Allen's going to get 225. The Bills are going to win.
I can see that. I can see Diggs touchdown part.
What I was going to ask you, Steve, is there anything on the defensive side? Because I know Baker is going to get laid out. I want to know who on the defensive side of the ball is going to lay him out so I can put him for anytime sack or something like that.
Keep an eye on Von Miller and them. I mean, they rotate in and out, whatever. If I was to do it, I would look at Ed Oliver. I will look at Von Miller. I will look at those guys in the interior and they're moving around. I think that's where you'd want to put your money. You're not going to get that much out of Bernard. You're going to get tackles. You get tackles, and Dorian, same thing. Dorian's clearly the LB2 right now. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking for a sack, it'd be between one of those two guys.
All right. So Zach, I know you're a betting man. So is there anything you would change, or is there something you would add to that?
If I'm adding something to that, I'm going on the offensive side of the ball, and I'm going to a guy that I already talked about earlier. That is a Mr. Dalton Kincaid. I don't have the odds up in front of me as to what his receiving yards over under are at currently,
I might go with
but I have
exception.
a feeling that his yards are probably going to be somewhere probably like 32 and a half, something like that. And if it's like that, I'm going to trust that he's probably going to get 6 targets again, and I think he can easily eclipse 40 plus yards. So I love the volume. I love knowing Knox is out right now. And
Yeah.
yeah, I view this as a must win for
Oh,
Buffalo. So for me, someone like Kincaid, that's if it's not a Diggs anytime touchdown score. The other thing I feel good about that offense on top of Allen's passing yards would be Kincaid's utilization right now. And I
yep.
think since it's still hasn't been a lot of weeks of consistency with Kincaid, I think that prop will still be relatively low. And that's where I like it now. You know, if we see another good week from Kincaid and he goes up to like 54 and a half yards, that's going to be a little too rich for my pockets because, you know, I still don't trust that tight end room, but that's where I think right now we can find Kincaid on a relatively low
Yeah.
prop. And that's where I want to jump on that now as a fourth
Yeah.
play.
They didn't put the Kincaid lines in yet, but let's
Okay.
say he was at 3.5 receptions. Would you take the over or the under?
I would take the over on that.
Over, yeah.
And I would probably take the over on his yards too, because if he's at 3.5 receptions, I'm going to expect him to be 28 and a half to maybe 34 and a half receiving yards, and I would
You
feel
do
good
the
that we could also
alternate at 25 plus.
for what? Or no, yeah, but it depends on the odds because sometimes those alternates, if it's minus 300, at that point I'm just adding an extra leg to not really lift my odds. So that's where I'd probably rather take the straight up and just see how I value because realistically, if it's only going to boost it a little bit and I don't really love the default line, I probably just won't touch it at all. Just to be safe rather than sorry, because sometimes that's Vegas telling us that they know something that we do not
Nope.
and we never want to
Right.
be bit in the ass that way.
Nope.
But talking about a bite in the ass, that's how I felt on Sunday. I felt like my dog came up behind me mid-show and just chomped on my ass. Oh wait, no, that didn't happen. I was just watching the Green Bay Packers play the Denver Broncos. With
What
that
a
in
great
mind,
segue.
thank you. We're going to get into Mike's rant of the week. This time it's Zach's rant of the week, and it's about my beloved Green Bay Packers. You know, I had a wide range of expectations going into this year. I'm not necessarily disappointed because I know this is a very young team. There's been a lot of injuries, so it's not a overreaction long term. But in regards to the promise and kind of the progress I wanted to see from some of these individual pieces, I haven't seen it. It hurts to say. I like to think I was a Matt LaFleur truther, but there's not a lot of truth out there in a good way right now, for lack of better words. LaFleur's play calling is it's ridiculous. Right now, you know, it's all right. We're going to keep handing the ball off. Oh, here's another obvious run. Okay, AJ Dillon, yeah, give us another 2 yards because that's all you're good for. All right, sweet. Now it's third and long, and instead of just going for that 10, 15-yard route, all right, let's throw it deep. And Jordan Love, that's the next part of it. You know, on those deep balls, sometimes he's making the wrong read. The late turnover in the game where he made a terrible read in regards to where the safety was, and it was just an easy INT game over. Just you know, my frustration was partially Jordan Love there in that read, but it was also partially that play call. Um, Jordan missed a better option that was open. I mean, I think pretty much any option was better there, considering there was two defenders and the ball was underthrown on a deep ball. So I think anything's better than that. But still, I want to see more creative play call in a responsible way. You know, I feel like it's. I alluded to this on Run Boys with Robbie, where it feels like it's either too safe or it's too aggressive. There's not a happy medium. Give me some of that creative play call, but I want you to mix it in. I don't need you to be aggressive when we just need a safe, responsible call. You know, 2nd and 7. That's let's have fun with that deep route then. Let's try and catch him off guard. We don't need to hand it off to AJ Dillon again where he's going to lose 2 or lose 4 or, gain just a couple. And then, oh, sweet, now let's go for the long ball where if it's an incomplete, now we're punting. I'm tired of this. I'm tired of Joe Barry. I don't know why he's still our defensive coordinator. That's all I'll say about Joe Barry because that's all the the time he deserves. So many injuries too. And that's where a lot of the individual player evaluation, I expected time needed for Jordan Love. I wasn't expecting year one dominance, but it's still someone I want to keep in my dynasty leagues. I want to find out because he wasn't that expensive coming into the year, even for some people were a little too crazy high on him, but I think we knew this was a project. He was always drafted as a project, treated as a project, and it's always going to look worse when you're replacing a multi-time MVP that's won a Super Bowl. Hate to say it, one of the best quarterbacks of all time looks a lot better than this young guy that's barely played in the NFL. Shocking, I know. But I'm not giving up on Jordan Love. I'm not giving up on LaFleur. But right now, I need to see progress in the right direction while hopefully we lose a couple more games in the process. Because I don't see us being a playoff team. I think best case scenario is going to be similar to last year, where we could be a fringe wild card team just to lose in week 17 or week 18 to have those hopes shut down. At this point, I'd rather move towards the top end of the draft, address some offensive line needs, maybe, because to me, yeah, some of those QBs would be cool. I don't necessarily expect them to be available. So unless you're truly getting the Caleb Williams or Drake May or maybe Penix, we can have that conversation on another day. I expect Jordan Love to get another year because he's on such a cheap deal. But overall, Packers, oh no, we suck again. That's how I feel right now. Jamie, thoughts?
Yeah, you said it really well, man. But young quarterbacks do need time to develop. He hasn't had much playing time. You can't blame it all on Jordan Love, but yeah, he does look on some plays like he needs some work.
Mm-hmm.
He looks nervous.
Yeah.
He doesn't look comfortable. I think part of that's the offensive line. I think part of it's just lack of reps. But it looks more mental than physical.
Play calling, the line. I noticed in this game, he threw to 10 different receivers. Like, what? How is there even 10 receivers on the team? Like, what is this offense doing? Like, why not put your three main guys in, let Jordan Love throw to the talented people that he can make a rapport with and grow with? Like, I looked at these names. I never even heard of half of them. There was like 5 or 6 receivers I never even heard of on that team that he threw the ball to.
And right now, some of those, Christian Watson got hurt for a few plays. Luke Musgrave got hurt for a few plays.
Yeah.
Aaron Jones is still on a snap count. And that's another thing. At this point, I either need to see all or nothing from Aaron Jones because I'm tired of this pitch count. There's that final drive, Aaron Jones wasn't utilized at all. There's not really an excuse for not having your best player on the field at that point. In that close game, especially where I said it on our Sunday morning pregame show. I viewed it as a must win, and I viewed it as a trap game, and it was. And why is AJ Dillon out there? Give me James Robinson, please. Like I would rather see James out there than AJ Dillon at this point, unless it's a goal line formation.
Steve? With Jordan Love though, if you look at the earlier games this season when he was very successful, like against the Bears and what have you, he left a lot on the field. So it was quite telling. We knew he was going to, at some point, have some kind of regression, growing pains. But to Zach's point earlier, teams in the NFL have found a blueprint. And it's been going on the last decade, which is get a cheap rookie, get a cheap younger quarterback deal, put him on that rookie contract, spread him out next couple of years and build around it. So if Jordan Love is the guy, it's not going to hurt for the next 2-3 years to try him out and see. It's not going to hurt. I mean,
and he took an extension that's favorable to Green Bay and not him. Yes. So worst case scenario, Green Bay can easily slide him into a backup and feel like, oh, cool, we're only paying you this much.
And build
around. A lot of teams are paying more for backups. And yeah, I think the big thing is not to overreact to the players. I think it looks a lot more mental. We know Jordan Love is raw. So I'm not ready to just be like, all right, screw this. I've seen enough. I'm out on him. To me, it just when he looks comfortable and confident, we see a lot more of those tools in his bag where it's like, wow, this could be really fun someday. I think. Go ahead.
there's a funny thing called recency bias. We're in the moment and we're like, oh, it's not so good. In reality, he's been about steady like this. It's just sometimes he hits the play, sometimes he doesn't. This is what you expect with younger players. This is why you have them on cheap deals.
And this is why also it's more polarizing than a lot of these rookie QBs we see, because there's more flair on certain plays, and then it reverts back to that ugly raw side. We see more of this guy has been on this offense for a couple of years. We see that those grooves he finds that shows a little bit more promise, but just the consistency. Give that time. You don't need to overreact to that. Before we jump into our next part with our waiver wire transaction aspect, we've got someone on Facebook right now. 14 team full PPR. Is there ever a time to use a number 4 waiver priority claimed it for a kicker, Dustin Hopkins? My kicker, Meyer, fired today. Hopkins already had bye and looks like number 1 kicker on elite defense team. Jamie, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm a Browns fan, if you don't know. I heard a stat today that he kicked over 50 yards or something without a miss. So, yeah, pick him up in a 14-team league. Like, what's really out there anyway on waiver? So if you need a kicker, grab him. The only thing I got to say is when December hits, be careful, because if they're playing at home, it gets cold, and our stadium's like a whirlwind if it's windy, man. So keep an eye on the weather late in the season during those winter, because we're right by that lake, and that wind effect, that kills.
Absolutely. No, I think number 4 waiver priority, I wouldn't worry about that at all. If it's something you need, if it's something you feel that you need to address, it doesn't matter at that point. If, like you alluded to with Meyer being your kicker, you need a kicker then. And it's a 14 team. So go get him. Go get Dustin Hopkins now. He'll treat you well. Don't overlook into the winter stuff. It's definitely something to be mindful of, what Jamie
alluded to. They'll be more in the playoffs anyway, so don't worry about it now.
And hopefully there might be, situational start sits at that point that you can address via the waivers. Yep. Kyle, good to see you in the thread as always.
Kyle, my favorite.
Interesting cast of characters, yep. I'm sure you're surprised to see me back over here. No, we've got our next subject, though, our waiver wire, our transactions. With that in mind, Jamie, you've got a guy in your favorite town. We were just talking about it, that cold, windy place right up on the lake.
Yeah, so I know he's only 4% owned, so you're going to be able to get him if you have the room. You might even if you don't, you might want to drop someone like MVS or someone on your. But it's Pierre Strong, man. Right now, he is one of the most explosive running backs on that Browns offense. I know you got Kareem Hunt. He got those touchdowns, but he's not looking like the old Kareem Hunt that we're used to. Pierre Strong, man, I liked him when he was on New England. So I actually have him in 8 dynasty leagues. So I think that's like 20% of my dynasty leagues. I think he's got like a 99th percentile speed, 85th percentile burst, and a 75th percentile agility score. So he is the most explosive running back on this Browns offense right now. So go check out Baltimore game. Look up Pierre Strong's 40-yard run and just see how explosive and how quick that guy is, man. He's a pass-catching running back. I think they'll use him more because, like you said, Jerome Ford is supposed to be 1 to 2 weeks, but we think he'll be out 3 to 4 weeks, man. And even when Jerome Ford comes back, who's to say he's going to be 100%? History shows that when people come back, when running backs, anybody comes back from a high ankle sprain, their efficiency goes down, their productivity goes down. So they can still use Jerome Ford here and there, even when he does come back. But for the next 2-3 weeks, short term, I think he'll be able to be pretty decent as a starter.
Steve, any thoughts on Pierre?
Did you write the article on Pierre, Jamie, this week?
Oh, I did. So go check out it. Twos. The waiver wire article comes out Monday nights. I wrote up a little bit more detail than what I just talked about. But yeah, go ahead and check that out too. I'm going for 2.
Yeah, well done. I read it, and I actually well, I shouldn't say this because they're not picked up yet, but I went to waivers myself, so you convinced me to pick up here. Just on the receiving ability alone, there's value, especially during these weeks. So hopefully I get him. Hopefully no one's watching.
No one's going to pick him up because he only had 8 carries, which was only 2 less than Hunt. So, yeah, no, he's not going to be on anyone's radar.
He's not going to be on anyone's radar because he's on a bad team or a bad offense, more importantly.
Mhm.
And, the only reason that team's usually in games is because of their great defense. And it's unfortunate with these teams where they're stacked on one side and not as stacked on the other. Similar to Cleveland, though, we have another team like that. That would be the Washington Commanders. And with that in mind, we have a guy on that team. Steve, why don't you tell us about him?
Yeah, let's go tight end here. It's a little boring, but just hear me out. You got Logan Thomas. Okay, Logan Thomas, 8% of leagues. He was a borderline tight end 1 in week 7. He had 4 catches, 51 yards on 6 targets. I mean, that's good enough to get you through these bye weeks, right? The waiver weeks, he has good matchups coming up. Week 12, Dallas. Week 13, the Dolphins. But here's where it gets a little interesting. If you're going to stash this guy, and we all need tight ends, let's look at our playoffs. If we're that far ahead, I don't know when your playoffs are, but I'm just gonna go through it. Week 12, Dallas, favorable matchup. Week 13, Miami, favorable matchup. 14 bye. Week 15, the Rams, favorable matchup. Week 16, Jets, favorable matchup. All of that is green, lit up like a Christmas tree. So if you need a tight end and you need a borderline tight end 1 favorable, there's your guy.
Jamie, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's had a couple top 10 games this year already, and being a tight end, that's all you can really ask for, man. If he gets the targets, he'll get you points.
Yeah, tight end, week 1, tight end 11, week 2, tight end 10, week 5, tight end 4, week 7, tight end 14, and for whatever reason, he's on a lot of waiver wires.
I love it, but if I'm talking tight ends on the waivers, there's another guy I want to talk about. He's up in Buffalo. I alluded to him a little bit already. Dalton Kincaid, 8 targets, 8 receptions. The snap share is there. Dawson Knox is out. If there was a tight end I want on waivers or someone that I'm trying to acquire in Dynasty, I already have Dalton Kincaid in a lot of leagues. But after last week, I am feeling great moving forward. He showed a lot of that promise where he could genuinely be that second option in the receiving game now. It doesn't need to be these long balls and lots of touchdowns. And honestly, I took more away from seeing the production of 8 receptions on 8 targets for decent yards than say 3 on 4 targets for 2 touchdowns. I like to see more come in his way, more workload, rather than just purely about about the red zone stuff. I expect the red zone opportunities to be there due to Dawson Knox being out. Any further thoughts on Dalton Kincaid?
I mean, even when Knox was in, he was still getting targeted, man. He had 4 targets week 1, 6 targets, 2, 5, 2, another, then 8. So, yeah, he's been getting targeted, and now with Knox out, he's going to get targeted even more.
Steve, thoughts on Dalton?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, week 7, he was a tight end 7. And week 1 and 2, he was heavily peppered in that offense. Tight end 18, tight end 16. Yeah, sky's the limit for him. As we know, these players, they're youthful, and throughout the season, these rookies progress. This is the time of year where you can get breakouts. I just did an IDP article on breakouts, but same thing applies to offense. There's going to be guys that are getting a lot of coaching, a lot of schemes, fits. There's going to be guys breaking out this whole the whole next bye weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, and Knox isn't really scary. So yeah, Dalton Kincaid can easily get in there and make some big plays and be the guy. So yeah, he would be at the top of the list.
Before we go any further, Josh is asking on YouTube, would you trade Derek Carr for Roshan Johnson in Jonu? 20-man PPR. My roster is Russ, JT, Aaron Jones, Tyreek, Christian Kirk, Komet, Jacoby Myers. Honestly, I think if you have Russ, I don't love Russ. I don't dislike him. I think he's good enough where you don't necessarily need Carr, and there's probably someone else. It sounds like a 1
Yep.
QB league.
League, yeah.
In a 1 QB league, I'm going to take the upside of Roshan. I'm a little nervous right now. Jonu, don't really care about him right now. I'm indifferent about Jonu. He's been decent. Kyle Pitts is starting to show up a little bit more. It's more so I just don't trust any tight ends. But realistically, you can get another running back and you've got the other positions addressed like it looks like you do. Carr for Roshan, just that alone, I think that's a great deal. Jamie, I'll come back to you. We know how you feel about Roshan. Steve, what are your
We
thoughts?
already know. Yeah, so the key here is a 20-team league, and I was like, what does he have at quarterback? You already answered it. Russell Wilson, Carr, you can get by. Sometimes those 20-team leagues, sometimes it's an overall flex where you can get away and put other things in there. I didn't ask that in the chat, but let's just take it as it is as value. Yeah, I'd make that trade. A young running back, you're going to need depth in a 20-teamer, and then Jonu is getting the true tight end positional value, so you can plug him in. I'm taking it. I am taking that deal. Carr to Wilson, you're not really missing much.
Yeah.
Jamie, you like Roshan?
Oh, yeah. Love
Do
Roshan. Everyone already knows. I would take Carr for Roshan straight up, but you're getting Jonu. Throw that in there. That's a smash, especially in a 1 QB league. Take the upside, man. You're going to get a good running back when he comes back. He'll be healthy, hopefully.
And the key is it's a 20-teamer. So, in those leagues, you don't need superstars. You just need soldiers. You need a whole –
Oh, no. It's 20 man. It's 20 man.
20 man. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're
okay.
good.
I threw it off, but yeah.
But with that in mind, without further ado, Jamie, please tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, right here every Tuesday night on Going for Two Cheat Sheet, and Sunday morning with my host Zach right there, my man. You can find us on Sunday morning Start Sit Show right here on Going for Two.
Steve, Mr. at IDP Hunter, you can follow him on Twitter that way. You can follow Jamie on Twitter at Jamie Perot. Steve, how about you plug your show yourself?
Yeah, I have a show. It's on Spotify and IDP, guys. We go over IDP standings. It's also on YouTube, so check it out. It airs every Thursday. We do it Wednesday night, so we can get the out there. And also, I'm a writer over at Fantasy Six Pack, and I'm also a writer at IDP, guys, as well. And then follow me on Twitter and ask me questions throughout the week. I'll get to you. Me and Jamie stay with this. We grind pretty much all week, so get one of us, and we'll answer that question.
Yeah, I was on Steve's show last week, and the doc, the very own Going for Two, Dr. James Ferretti, is going on this week.
Yeah, yep. we have a good schedule coming up. We have the doctor, obviously the fantasy sports doctor, and then the following week after that, we actually got a college scout for the Shrine Bowl. He's going to come on and he's going to show us a little bit of like what he looks for and scouts for. Kind of make it cool. It's a standing show, but we kind of make it interactive. All the other geek stuff we like to do.
Yep, absolutely. No, I get it. I love it. No, I'm excited to tune in for those. Jamie, thank you for joining as always. Steve, great seeing you. Thank you too. You can find me on Twitter at Behind the Zach. You can also find me every Tuesday evening, first and foremost, on Fantasy and Frames. I will be covering the waiver wires. We just did our Week 8 show tonight. That'll be Gator and myself. We're cooking in there. We were in our bag. That's my brother, so we were just vibing the whole time, and it was a blast. Then I'll be here next week, hosting again, filling in for Mike. And then after, you will be able to find me on the Rum Boys Network. We not only have the NFL Rum Zone, we now have the NBA Rum Pass. That'll be hosted by your boy. We're covering all the basketball. Tonight, we're about to dive into the Phoenix Golden State game. There's 3:46 left in the first. Jump in with me for the rest. And then going forward, we're going to have the quad feed. So good seeing you as always. I'll see you on Sunday morning with Jamie again. And I'll see you next week here.